पूज्याय राघवेन्द्राय सत्यधर्मरताय च भजतां कल्पवृक्षाय नमतां कामधेनवे सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावतीतमस्तु मा विश्विदावहै ओम शांति शांति शांति। मांडुक्य उपनिषद शांति पाठ। ओम भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवांसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति न पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति न क्षार्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्ददातु। ओम शांति शांति शांति। Welcome friends once again to the great Upanishad expounding the greatness of the Om, the Bijakshara, from where the entire the explanation of our scriptures have started. So this Upanishad, when we started with the greatness of Omkara and how pervades every aspect of it, be it our own life, be it the universe, and how it has been taken to be the Muladhara Akshara, and how it has been interpreted, how it has been taken in our all Upasana. Om is most important. If you don't know anything, even just reciting Om and doing your Upasana is good enough, because Om is nothing but a composition of the entire that entire universe and entire Brahman in that. When you mean entire Brahman in the sense, entire your own soul, your experiences, everything is involved into that. So taking Om and how it is going to explain the entire world, that is what we have seen. We have seen the first mantra telling how great is Om. Just for the purpose of recap, we will just recite the mantra, briefly see, and then we will go about mantra after mantra. Om ityetat aksharam idam sarvam tasyo upavyakyanam. So that aksharam itself, represents everything, because there are 51 alphabets in Sanskrit. When you say Om, that encompasses entire 51 akshara. And in our concept, and when you recite Om, when you recite it in the healing harmonics, what we discussed, about during our Kenopanishad, at about 111 hertz, when you are reciting Om, it takes you totally out of your being in this world. It takes you into a stratosphere. When you take into that stratosphere, you totally forget yourself into that. You don't have sort of the consciousness which is keeping you going entire through this world, and all your thoughts, all your actions, and what you are going to do, and everything goes out of you. Nothing is remaining with you. You are into Laya. I think your resonance is totally with the stratosphere. So that is the effect of this Om. Om, everyone have got a different way of reciting it. It is by practice people develop, whatever is comfortable to them. Because everyone, we have a particular way of reciting which is comfortable to take us to a particular meditative stage. When you say meditative stage, we always describe the 3 steps. First is Dharana. Dharana is taking all our thoughts, which is floating here and there, to bring it together into a particular fold. We call it Dharayati Dharana. Dhara is, it's a sort of a small string. Even in Kannada it is called a string, Dhara. See, Dhara is in Sanskrit also, Dhara is bringing everything together and hold it together. Ekagraga Chinta. When you got it, then you go into the next is Dhyana. Before you go into the Dhyana, you first have to have the Dharana. Unless Dharana is there, you will not be able to do Dhyana. It is not fast food. You want to do meditation, it's not simply, go and sit and you go on having a Dhyana. Dhyana will not come. First you will have to keep everything into peace. We have talked about, Adi Devata, Adi Baudika, and Adi Adhyatmika. See, all the things will be peace. Adi Devika, because everything, there should not be any external disturbances. And Adi Baudika is not in the place around you. There should not be any disturbances. Adhyatmika, there should not be any agitation in your mind. You got, you just talked to someone, because you are just thinking about what he talked and what you told him. Maybe he has got a problem, you are thinking, but you should not have any agitation whatsoever. Finally, when you take everything together out, then it becomes the dharana. You get the ekagra chinta. Once you get it, then you can meditate. When you are starting meditation, what happens is, it is like a sliding door. Your thoughts will again keep coming, bombarding, like going and coming. As we discussed in a washing machine, you are going to the rinse cycle where it takes away whatever little, that dirt that is still left, it is taken out. It is like a continuous, it is sort of a repeated one. So, repeated effort finally brings it into that, because there is no other way but to repeat the effort and to get all thoughts out, at least thoughts out in the sense you are able to concentrate totally onto what you are, even 1 minute. You may not be able to do for half an hour or something like that, even a second, if you want to do it. Once you have that folds you, that is the dhyana, meditation. Once you hold the dhyana and hold it, for a considerable period of time, maybe, once you start counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe up to 10, even up to that you do it, that is a great effort. It looks very simple. What is there, up to 10 I can do it. It's not possible. Once you try to do it, you will understand how difficult it is. Once you do it, you will also understand after doing that what a fantastic, the feeling you have. Totally at peace. You do not have any agitation. You are able to have a clarity of thought. See, anything, any information which is given to you, negative or positive, you will be able to sift out, and you will be able to say it is what they are telling is out of their own ideas, their own perception. But you will be able to exactly take what could be right. So that is how, because once you develop it, slowly it takes you towards excelling in everything. Your perception becomes excellence, and then your perception thoughts becomes excellence. From perception, thought comes. From thought becomes excellence, your action becomes excellent. Once action becomes excellent, the life is wonderful. So this is how the entire thing happens. That is why, this Om, when we recite, that is what the first mantra said. And it also said, Bhutam Bhavat Bhavishyati. All the three are into that. When you say, it talks about your, it covers your past, it covers your present, and it also covers your future. So the past is, whatever has been created, the present is what is in, future is already there. But when you have a ekagra chinta, it brings you to the very present, continuous, this very presence. That very presence, once you hold it, it covers all aspects of your past, future, everything and all. Why? Your future will be dependent upon how you are able to act perfectly in this world. That is possible only if you are in the present. And your past should have given you the experience and the lessons that once you have derived, you will be able to apply only in the present. So present is more important. Bhutam Bhavatu Bhavishyati. All the Bhavishyati Titi, all of them together will give you Sarvam Omkaraya. Once you do that, everything becomes Omkar. And whatever has happened, once you read about the past, because we might be reading now this pandemic is there. 1918, there was a Spanish flu, some pandemic was there. Earlier, they were there. History has recorded so many things. But when history is recorded, history has also got its own taints. Because people who have recorded, they have recorded from the perspective of their own thoughts. Because they might not have exactly given objectively everything. But then finally, the historical studies, people who have done the research brought about some sort of a factual thing onto that. That gives us an interpretation as to what is likely to happen. In the sense, what pandemic now it is happening, it's not new to the world. The world has faced a similar thing earlier, and the world has come out of that. So it shows everything shall pass. This too shall pass. So there is no point, there is nothing, we don't have to be any negative in that, and this has been happening, we have got the historical facts. So this will give a confidence. And once we have the concept, basically what it happens is Upanishad, it gives you the self-confidence in doing everything, and it imparts the skill what you require. The skill and self-confidence, once you have it, do it without any doubt. Self-confidence is devoid of any doubt, devoid of self-doubt. So that is what, the entire thing it gives you. Once it gives, then Once you are able to hold it, because that will again go off. It may not continue, because again you will be reacting to some other situation, it will go off. But then by practice, once we hold it, it gives it. For instance, but then they are telling, Yadacha Anyat Trikalatitam, it is beyond all the things. It is pervading. The Om is beyond everything. Whatever you known, whatever you are not known, it goes beyond that. Omkara eva. That is why this Omkara has been taken as a ultimate primordial upasana. That's why I also, for the purpose of repetition, say all the great acharyas, Shankaracharyas, Ramanujacharyas, all these are in Madhva Sampradaya and all acharyas. Whoever is taking sannyasa, the only diksha given is Omkara. They are doing Omkara upasana. There may be so many scriptures. It's not they have to master all the scriptures. They may be mastering all the scriptures to understand and to impart the knowledge to others. But as far as they are concerned, they will have to have only that Omkara. That is the upasana they have to do. And Omkara upasana, once you do it, especially the sannyasis, why they have to do it? They get that the vairagya. The vairagya is a detachment from the whole worldly affairs, the whole worldly expectations, worldly pleasures, everything. That is why in the family life, people are told, you do Omkara only as a limited extent, because then, if you are in the family life and you want to do Omkara, either, you will get a Vairagya and you will be going out of that. To avoid that only, they say you do it limited. Because all the upasanas, they have got certain sort of a rules, how much you have to do. For instance, Gayatri is 24 letters. Gayatri, when you are doing 24 letters, you are not supposed to be doing more than 3000 Gayatri in a day. Some people, because there are people who are doing 1000 Gayatris also. In fact, our former Chief Justice, Venkatachalaya, he has said in one of his meetings, he regularly does 1000 Gayatris every day. That's good. But even when you do it with sort of a total commitment, as a being, we are not supposed to be doing more than 3000. The reason is, it has got 24 letters. So 3000 Gayatri you do, it is 72,000 sort of energy nodes are created. Your body has got Ida, Pingala and the Sushmana Nadi. It has got only 72,000 nodes. You will not be able to take. So the energy that is created by the recitation of the Gayatri, your body will not be able to take. That is why you keep it at that. Sometimes you might find people who are doing upasana, they are little weird. They are little, because we might find, at least they will appear to be deranged because they are not in control of themselves. That is because of excess upasana. They are not supposed to do it. That is why, because Narayana Akshara also, when it is 8 letters are there, they are not supposed to be doing more than 9,000 because, once it is there, that the 72,000 nadis can't take. Like Omkara also, they say, because they should not be even the sannyasis also, they have got a limitation. Extraordinarily, they do some very higher. Otherwise, the maximum they are also doing not more than 1,000 or something like that. Because this is basically to keep your body in balance so that you are able to acquire the knowledge and transmit the knowledge to everyone else. The purpose of living is not only acquiring the knowledge, you have to share the knowledge. In fact, Isavasya Upanishad mantra 9 to 11, what we said was, the greatest thing is the one who is able to remove the ignorance of others is a great acharya, and if he doesn't do, he is more worse a lot. He will get more worse a lot even than an ignorant person. It is your bounden duty to remove ignorance whenever you come across. So that is why, because all the acharyas, why they go on giving pravachana, satsang and all, because that is their ordained duty. It's not something they are doing out of getting the devotees or anything like that. Their ordained duty is whatever they know, they will have to disseminate and they have to give it. That is the purpose behind that. This is exactly what we saw it. And then we saw the second mantra, Sarvam Hedat Brahmaha. Because we saw everything is Brahman, creation of Brahman. In the sense, nothing is there. Even in, if you get a concept, as to everything is illusory, or even if they are insentient, behind that, the substratum, there is a power behind that. That is the power is the power of the Brahman. Because without him, even if a stone is there, stone may be in a particular shape. The stone may be on the roadside also. The stone may be in the form of a big hill. So all of them have got a substratum. But why the hill is separate? Why Himalaya is there to stand there for so many times? Why it has become so much of a great sort of place on the earth where the wisdom has generated from so many acharyas, so many tapasvis who are there in the Himalayas. It does have the substratum of Himalaya and the entire atmosphere there. It is so pristine, pure, and it is able to give the cosmic vibration those who are doing the meditation there. That is how Himalayas are still having that great divine potential. Whenever you go there, we go to Badrinath, all the Char Dhams. What is Badrinath? Badri is the name of the god. The Badri is wherever Brahman is there, wherever the god is residing, Badri, and his Nath, Badrinath. Like Kedarnath also, Kedar is another form of Brahman, because they are all there, that Dham names have come mainly because of the divine manifestation in those places, and those places having a rarefied atmosphere at so much, maybe 11,000, 12,000, of course Everest is beyond 28,000 and all. These are all 14,000 feet and above. The rarefied atmosphere you can't think, because bodily also you can't think of other things. Naturally your mind is being focused on to the ultimate power. That is how we have got great tapasvis from there. And we also got another thing, Ayamatma Brahma, one Mahavakya, we saw that. Ayamatma Brahma is considered to be a Mahavakya in Advaita discipline, as well as it is also a great, because it has got a variety of interpretation. It says Ayamatma Brahma is a Mahavakya, it says self is Brahman. A typical interpretation, on a cursory interpretation it is like that, but it has also got a different interpretation. Ayamatma denotes one who is Adhana Kartatva, the enlivening power who is inside you, who is activating you, who is enabling you. He is the one who is doing it. That is why he is called Atma, in the sense that enlivening power. That is the interpretation given by others. Whatever way you take it, it is not you are under control. You have been enabled by someone else. Unless you are enabled, you are not able to do it. So to get that, to get closer to him only, this entire Upanishad takes you. Brahman means Brahman is not anywhere else. He is in our heart only. That Upanishad will tell us where exactly he is there, how we will have to approach him and all. He is nowhere. You don't have to search him around anywhere. You don't have to go to the dhams. You don't have to go to the pilgrimages. You don't have to go to the yajnas, yahas. He is very much here. So once you are able to get it, you don't need to do anything and all. Because the very purpose of doing all those things, you are already able to get it. So once the goal is achieved, you don't have to go, irrespective of wherever you are doing. So when we do a puja also, when we are doing what we are doing, we are taking the portraits are there. We have got the photos, or the pratimas are there, or you have got the Shivalingas, or the Salagrama is there. Everything we are taking, and we are just putting our offering our prayers and all. What does it mean? What we are saying is we are having a form, and we are sort of giving our entire consciousness into that. We are taking our consciousness and putting into that, and consider him to be the highest consciousness who is enlightening us. And from there we are getting it. That form is enabling us to get that. So therefore, Ayamatma Brahma is a concept. Wherever you are there, you are being enabled by someone. You put your heart, mind and soul into that. Soyamatma Chatushpad. The Atma likewise, he has got the four padas. Four padas in the sense four states. That four states we discussed as it is the Jagradasthana, where your waking state, and then your dreaming state, and your deep sleep state. And the last one we called it Turiya. The four states are there, and the four states are the one this Upanishad has been explaining. So now coming to the first pada, last week we saw the first pada, we explained a bit on that, and we also discussed in detail before we were to go to the dreaming state. The mantra 4, mantra 3, when we discussed on this waking state, you can have in your document mantra 3. Jagradasthano bahiprajnaha saptangaha eko navimshati mukaha. Stula book Vaishvanaraha Pratama Padaha. See, Jagrasthano Bahiprajnaha Saptangaha Ekona Vimshati Mukhaha. When we are in the waking state, we are the entire external things are influencing us. We are able to enjoy as well as deal with the external things. What you are seeing, what you are hearing, and what is being talked to, what you are feeling. All those things, we are able to get it. How we are able to get it? Because we have got two aspects. One is self and another is cosmic. In the self, we have got Ekona Vimshati Mukhaha. See, not only one mouth, just for the purpose of recap, Ekona Vimshati Mukhaha. 19 faces are there. The 19 faces are 5 Jnanendriyas, that is smelling, seeing, hearing, feeling, as well as taste. All the 5 Jnanendriyas, they are the 5 Jnanendriyas which is active when you are in the waking state. And then your Karmendriyas, 2 legs, 2 hands, and your regeneration and your excreta. All the 5, they together, they operate as a Karmendriyas. Jnanendriyas 5, Karmendriyas 5, and then coming to, you have got Prana, Mukhya Prana, who comes into being. He has got 5 aspects: Prana, Apana, Vyana, Udana, Samana. All the 5 of them, they have got, the Prana has got a 5 because very great oxygen what we are talking about, it is the Prana's great aspect. When he brings the pure oxygen from the air, it has got almost 70 to 73% of the nitrogen. So finally, when your lungs are able to take, that 22 to 23% of the oxygen what is there, and then it fills it out and sends the rest of the things back. It has to work like that. See, unadulterated pure oxygen gets into your system. And apana, when you are able to breathe out, whatever is not required, whatever is not the conducive to our system, that goes off. And prana, apana, vyana. Vyana is the one vyaptaha. It spreads through all your body. The energy spreads through all your bodies. It energizes everything. Once the oxygen goes, it has to go into your bloodstream. It has to activate your nodes, the neuron nodes. It also activates your neurons, most importantly. The more oxygen intake you have, because the neurons, when people do in the tapas in the Himalayas, they get a pure rarefied oxygen there. So when you get it, that's why they are able to live even without food for several days. So that enables them to get that, the power and your thinking, their thinking never varies. You can't find them having dementia and all those who are there in Himalayas. There has been no reported case of dementia among those living in Uttarakhand and the higher plains, Dora and hills, because that atmosphere is like that. So that atmosphere keeps you going, your neuron gets the benefit, your hypothalamus is active. So that is how it gives you the particular and Vyana, Samana. Samana is the one which gives the equilibrium. See, because supposing your digestion is not proper or your intake is not proper, the entire thing is being equalized. Equipoise is being brought about. See, supposing once you take the food, I think you are supposed to take after some time only the water, because the Agni is there. The Agni, when it is there, because it's like you are doing a yajna to your stomach. When you are taking a food, it's a yajna. That's why we do all these ahutis, and we take the Chitraya, Chitraguptaya, Yamaya, Sarvabhutaya. Then we say Pranaya Svaha, Bhanaya Svaha, Vyanaya Svaha, Udanaya Svaha, Samanaya Svaha. When you do that, it is a ahuti. It is not you are simply taking a food. You are doing a yajna. You are giving it to the stomach. The Agni is activating, it comes. When the Agni is there and when it is there, and when the Agni is activating, finally, you need some water. That's why after 20 minutes of your food or something like that, you are supposed to take some water so that you simply bring the heat generated by the Agni and the energy flows into all over your body. That body takes, and because if you are taking the timely food in the earlier times, this will definitely be helpful. But if you don't follow the current system of taking whatever is available depending upon what we wish, that's how our system goes a little imbalanced. But if you follow it, there is no imbalance whatsoever. Those is 5 pranas, and then we have got finally the manas, the most important thing, disembodied mind. It has got 4 aspects: Manas, Buddhi, Ahankara, Chitta. Manas, Buddhi, Chitta, Ahankara. All the four together makes 19. Ekona Vimshati Mukhaha. Ekona Vimshati Mukhaha, that is there in all the states. It is in the dreaming state also that Ekona Vimshati Mukhaha is there. And the waking state also is there. In sleeping state also it is there. But how many of them will active and what is their function, that we will see progressively. And when we saw from the cosmic stage, it is Bahi Prajna. We got the entire external experience, internalizing it. That's how we were getting the knowledge. And Bahi Prajna, once you do it, in cosmic what it happens? In cosmic it is like a Virat Swarupa, Viswarupa. See, he is like, if all our minds, whatever we are thinking, everyone in the world, if sentient, insentient animals, all the minds are networked by an internet. And if there is one creature who is having all the internet together, that is Virat Swarup, cosmic. He is having everyone's mind. He knows what you are thinking, what is going on, and what you are going to get, and how you are going to react. Everything is known. And how the things are likely to come, whether it is going to be a pandemic, whether it is going to be a tsunami, or whether it is going to be something else. He knows, because that's what he is able to get. In fact, there was one study done during 9/11. The 9/11 is they made it into some immortal date in United States. But we had so many 9/11s, we have all forgotten, we have lived with it and we have overcome that. But those people are still not able to overcome one 9/11, they still talk about it. So it became so popular. In fact, in one of the universities, of all the universities, Princeton University took up a research on doing what is this 9/11 and all. So the 9/11 they found, because when they were seeing, because they were mapping the entire the human minds of so many people across the United States, the most of the 80% of the people mind were agitated, sort of a forewarning, something amiss is likely to happen. So they gave such an interpretation to that. For us, it may be happening in a dime a dozen. In some part of country, something else will be happening. There will be a flood in Bengal and Orissa, and sometime we will be having a tsunami in south. Sometimes we have something else. The earthquake in north. All these things happen. We are living with it. But for those people, any small mishap is being sort of projected so much. But it took so much of extent that Princeton University made a study and said people do have a particular type of agitative mind at a particular point of time before 9/11, and they were able to something forewarning, something amiss is likely to happen. This is what they said. This maybe they are trying to give a scientific color to something what is happening in the world. And then what is happening is Sthula Book Vaishvanaraha. Whatever is happening is, what we are telling is the grass in the dense world. Whatever we are experiencing is the grass experience, Sthula Book. In the cosmic also they are having the Sthula Book. Here also we are taking Sthula Book. In cosmic, when the mind is so networked, what it happens? He is like a Vishwarupa. What Arjuna requested in 11th chapter of Gita, when he wanted to see the Vishwarupa of Krishna, he looked like a really sort of the being, he is not able to stand. He is having so many faces. Some are so cruel, some are so blissful, some are so charming. All demons, devas, all dolphins to Dinosaurs, all beings, all reptiles, everything was there, because all sorts of things, because he was not able to stand, because he is the one who is having everything inside him. Everything comes out of him. So therefore, it is the Virat Swarupa, that Vishwanara, that is the cosmic form of it. Why the cosmic form is described here is, you are just a small dot in the full scheme of the things. You are a small stream in the entire great fountain in which the spiritual power is flowing. You are just part of the whole scheme of things. You are not someone who is different from others. So there is someone who is managing. There is ordained rule is there which is happening. So in fact, this is Pratama Pada, what has been described in that. So there is one particular story, when Alan Watts is a sort of I would told him about some of his quotes and all. He's again one who was mastering the Zen philosophy and the Eastern philosophy, and he has given whole lot of lectures, maybe 1,000 hours of lectures way back in 50s in San Francisco. And at that time, you didn't have such a recording system at all. In spite of it, he has got a crystal clear podcast. You can go to internet and see Alan Watts. His talks comes continuously. And now he has become very popular because when things are people are having a sort of tendency to hear those spiritual things, they go to him. And he has said so many things, and of course he has but none of the denomination considered to him to be a monk or a great exponent of their philosophy, be it Buddhist or be it Zen or be it Eastern philosophy. He was on his own. He was a professor in the university. He was basically a priest from southern England. He came to US and he developed that. So he has written a book called The Book. Easy to remember the book. It is a book. It is for children. The story is a children. So when he has given the book, he just to make the understand, how all our experiences are there. In fact, it's being quoted a lot in, the exponents of who are talking about Indian philosophy, particularly Advaita. This is being talked about. See, God is a very powerful being. He was all alone in the world. He was so capable, and whatever he does, he will be very perfect. After all, he is God. He will not be doing wishy-washy, like that. He knows everything is absolutely perfect. So he got bored. He wanted to create, okay, what to do now? What am I to do? So he just wanted to create one person with whom he can play. And for that, what he has to do, if he thinks God is all-powerful, he can do everything. Everything is within his power. So nothing is beyond him. So he forgot that he is a God. He forgot, since he is doing everything perfectly, he forgot so perfectly that he forgot that he is a God. So he came into this world and he experienced that. He didn't realize he is a God. And after a period of time, he was trying to find and experiencing everything. When he did meditation and all, finally discovered nothing but he himself is the God. See, that is how Aham Brahmasmi, because a lot of people say, it is nothing but God's play. Leela we call it. When he creates the being. Why is he creating? Because all those souls which are dormant, they have to perfect themselves in the evolution. The evolution is, in fact, there was a question which came to me about a couple of days before. I was just explaining to that, in WhatsApp. The question came, if all of us are, having, you are going to divide everything and all, it's all very confusing concept. People can't understand what it is. Animals are there, insentients are there, we are there. What is the purpose? We have to see we are all one creation. Let us see, because what is the God and why so many manifestations and all. Like, if you remember, the same question Chinmayananda asked his Guru. Why don't you say it's the one consciousness and give all these things and all. Then only Chinmayananda was asked to go and fetch a water from Ganges. When he wanted him to fetch a water, he has to bring it in a container. So he told him, without container there can't be a water. There will have to be a manifestation. Then only he will come to know what is the manifested form. Through that only you will be able to know the real purpose, the real enlivening power, or the Brahman, within you. Otherwise you will not be able to know. It is like that, because when it happens, you will be able to know only when you are able to go through. The God himself has to go through. That's what they were telling. In the sense, you are nothing but you have got a spiritual being. You are an enlightened being. But in this world, you have, by virtue of relating yourself to the world and reacting to this world, living in this world, you have forgotten you are such a spiritually enlightened, heightened being. Now you are being brought back to your consciousness. That's what the book says. It is for children's book. Any child can enjoy it, but elders can enjoy much more with a philosophical intent. This is what he has said in that particular book. Likewise, here also Stulabhak Vaifaraga Pradama Pataha. We also saw when we are living in this world, we think we are doing everything and all. See, supposing you are building a house, you say, I have built a house. That's what we say. Finally, if you really see into the cause and effect of it, it is the engineers or the masons who must have built the house. They are building it. The place is, of course, yours. You have provided the funds and you have approved the plan. They build it for you. But finally, you become the owner of that house using it is my house. But everything else is prepared by someone else. So likewise, when you say that you have got this done, I went to US or I did that, because I had this failure, but I came out of that, all those things. For everything who is someone else is getting it done for you. But then you take the ownership for that. But you have got a right to take the ownership because you are totally committed to whatever was to be done. You are not deviated from that what you have supposed to do. To construct a house, you might have got the funds, you have engaged the right persons, you might have been following it up, you saw it is completed, nothing goes amiss, you provided all the resources, finally it came to it. Because that is where your skill lies and you are supposed to do only that. In the world also it is like that. So we have got the faculties, these are all the gift by Him. We are using these gifts and we are providing the resources. Finally He gets it done for you in our evolution. This is exactly what happens. So likewise in all the animals, beings and all those things, when God has created, they have created everyone to evolve to their perfect stage. A fish can evolve next to the stage, it may become a bigger fish. Maybe after some time it may become a shark. After that it may become a dolphin with more intelligence. Likewise, it has got an evolution. So is, because when it happens, that is why when you are getting this body in the form of a human being, Durlabam Manushya Janmanam. See, after million births, we have got this form of Manushya Janma. Once we have got that, we will have to take it for a further evolution. It's not that, you have got that after millions of births, you stop at that. You have got still to evolve. You can reach, you have got a limitless. People can go beyond the limits. But then, are you happy with it? Are you willing to take it? The choice is ours. That is how we have come into the Adhyatmic study. When we are Adhyatmic study, when we say how we are able to get, because we might have heard somewhere, then we have taken interest, we have come here and all. And we always say, it is the grace of the God that is required for this. The grace of the God is more we sort of think about, more we look into whether what we are really doing does have a meaning or does a purpose. Or, why can't we see this thing? Why can't we listen, what the Upanishad says, Veda says? When we take a sort of abiding interest, slowly it comes. Then we get into the mode of getting this particular knowledge for further development. So that is how, the grace of the God comes to us. Grace of the God, when it comes to us, it depends upon how much interest you have generated. Supposing I have taken I am getting 35%, and God can give a grace mark of 5% to make it 40. But if we are somewhere less than 35, I am in 25 or something like that, God can't help it. That means I have to do little more, I have to take little more interest and little more upasanas or little more, because I have to keep away from what is happening around me, what is happening to me. And totally when the thought goes off, when we are thinking about, at this stage, we are thinking about the nation, we are thinking about the society. So that dominates, almost best part of our psyche, our thought. Thinking about ourselves have come down. Maybe 10 years before, we might have had a different, our proportion of thinking ourselves might have been more. Now it is come down. So basically that is the evolution. Once you have that evolution, nothing like that. So once you think about others being, this is what is happening. So in these particular the upasana, when you are talking about Bahiprajna, when the external, when the sthula, whatever sthula experience you are getting, it is the sthula body. Through the sthula body, you experience the full world. That is why it is called sthula book. And we are called the Vaishva, because we are experiencing in this world. And the cosmic is called Virat, Vaishva. Otherwise, Vaishva Nara. Vaishva Nara also we explained. Vaishva is who is pervading the entire world. Nara is non-destructible. Nara. He doesn't have any destruction. He is imperishable. The imperishable cosmic is there and he is guiding us. He is within us. So it is basically we are trying to find his place in us through the waking experience. This is the first one. And we are coming to the mantra number 4 in your document. I think if you can to look into your document, you can see that Swapnasthano Antaprajnaha Saptangaha Ekonavimshati Mukaha Praviktabuk Tejaso Dvitiyapataha. Swapnasthano Antaprajnaha. It is your internal consciousness. So what happens, when you are in a waking state? and you naturally get tired of the world at some point of time and tired of a day-to-day experience some point of time. Morning to evening, you have got variety of experience. You were happy, you were bored, you were a little disjointed, and then you are, I think, more, I think you hold yourself together and you are focusing on something, you are able to do it, and then you have your food, you relax for some time. It is like that, because when you are having something, you come and, relax yourself. You shut down, all your activities, come and watch the TV for a while. It is like that. So when you want to relax, and when you are relaxing, assuming, you are trying to have a sleep, but not having sleep and all. Assuming even if you are having a sleep, you do get certain dreams. The dreams certainly come, that is, you are not in a deep sleep. In a deep sleep, you will not get dream. So when you are getting a dream, then that is how dream comes. You don't have any external experience. No Bahiprajna is there. And there is no Sthula book. You are not getting any gross, dense world experience. When you are into that, this Antaprajna, the God, he is called Tejaso Dvitiya Pata. He is called Tejasa. The Tejasa, like from Chitta, Chitta has got the light. It is a repository of all your experiences, knowledge and thoughts. It does have a light. Consciousness has got a light. It takes your impressions in your mind, internal impressions in your mind. Not out of the experience of your body, not because of experience of your eyes or ears. What you are getting is the impressions latent in your mind is coming out. It is created. And it creates and it gives you sort of particular dream. Dream may be anything depending upon, because it doesn't have to have any of your previous mental state and all. It comes on its own because so many things are recorded in your mind. Maybe for the last 10 days something must have been recorded and something else will come. Maybe you are going into another sphere of space also. That may also happen in the dream. When it comes, it is all, you might have read some book, you might have watched some documentary. That's all, it might have been recorded. You might not have given any particular attention. But then something, which you might have, momentarily taken all those things recorded, that comes into your mind. That latent thought, the recording in your mind is being taken out and played back to you in the Swapnasthana. It is Antaprajna. It is internal. And when it happens, you are totally, because you know only what you are being reckoned. And one thing, if you carefully sort of care to at least recollect, your dreams, you will be able to see the things more clearly. Tejasa. See, you will not find any confusion. Even whatever you are doing, that's what, one great Acharya said, even if you are sort of going out into a space or even going into a slum, you will see everything is very clear. There will not be any confusion whatsoever. But then that stage is there where God reacts. He is there. You are also aware. Your self-consciousness is there. And your Karana is there. And the Karya is there. Both are there. Then it is getting, and he creates the dream state. What is the effect of dream state? What it happens? So in dream state, you should not try to find the meaning for your dreams. Basically, it tells about us. See, when Swami was there in Himalayas, one gentleman went and told him, look, I've got a lot of problems, I get all bad dreams, this and that and all. And that Swamiji, he gave a very sort of a befuddling reply. He said, I am not interested in a problem or dreams and all. See, man has gone for a problem to be solved. He has approached him. He made such a sort of a drastic reply, I am not interested in your problem or dreams and what is this? He is a very, very sort of highly enlightened Swamiji. He got, well, what is that? He has been brusquely brushed aside like that. Then he said, I am interested in you. So what it causes to you? If you want to talk about the dream, you go to a psychiatrist and he may refer to a therapist and they may suck money from you and give you the interpretations of this and all. It's not that. Right? But it also does have a meaning. Now when it comes, you may find something, which you might have had an ambition which you couldn't fulfill. You might have wanted to study, something else in your earliest days. Maybe you didn't have the facility, or maybe you didn't have the opportunity, or you wanted to go to some other country, do something, or you wanted to do some other profession altogether, what is, you wanted to be a doctor, you might have gone into something like an engineer or something else, or artist or something like that. But then those things, your aspirations, you're latent in your mind, that comes. So that activates. So what it shows is, whenever you have that, the God shows you still have certain things left. If you want, you can still develop in that. Because there are some people you might have seen, after 60s, 70s, they pursue their careers and they do those. They are all latent in their mind. It's not that someone has told them and all. So they have been seeing, and I wanted to become a doctor, I couldn't become, why can't I do it? If you go to US universities, there is no sort of a age bar. To have a age bar for any of the universities is a federal offense. Even 80 plus people are studying with 18 plus people in the same class. It is very common in US. Perhaps not in India, because we are used to a particular culture. It is so. So when it is there, that is what it happens. In this one particular sort of experience, which came to light, in one of the discussions, one exponent, when Swamiji was explaining, this was happening, because this dream, sometimes it gives you, because dream is based on your latent thoughts, dream is based on your faith, and dream is based on your sort of a you are not able to do so many things in your life, that also will come. I missed doing so many things. That may also come. Because you feel, there is a void in your life. That will also be coming into thing. This is an actual experience, real life experience, has been anecdote told by someone else in a particular context. In Mantralayam, the Raghavendra Swami Vrindavanam is there. And Raghavendra Swami Vrindavanam, if you go at any point of time, lot of people, from all walks of life, all over India, they come. They all come with a vow, and they all come and do certain sort of a sevas. Some people do it for 15 days, some people do it for 7 days, some do 3 days. Some people bring the dumb and deaf, even the blind. There is a belief, because they may get it, it's something like that. All those things, it's happening. So this was happening in, so a lot of people, a lot of crowd. If you go to Mantralayam, there is no time, when there is a minimum, I think you will find not less than 80,000 to 100,000 people, coming and going. There is a high traffic there, and the Mantralayam is also so popular. So when in that particular Mantralayam, on a particular day, there was some occasion there and all. One Swamiji from Udupi has gone there. The Udupi Swamijis, they are all Bala Sannyasis. See, they are all, the entire, the villages around Udupi, there are variety of villages, Adamar, Palimar, the matas are being named after those villages. Those people, they offer their children for the higher studies, and if they, just to become, they can also take the Diksha as a sannyasis. They offer it to the respective matas. The Bala Sannyasis are being offered at the age of 3 or 4. Some of them may not be, I think, they know only their own spiritual life as the life. They don't know anything else. That's what is happening. One of the Bala Sannyasis was almost, about to be throned for a particular mata, and he had gone to Mantralayam. So since he is a sannyasi who has come there, and because, they all have got a particular course to follow. In the Mantralayam, they give a small place, for the sannyasis, and they give a separate corner in the mutt itself. Inside the mutt itself, there is a separate facility for them, so that they can do their upasana, and they also do their meditation and all was there. This Bala Sannyasi, when he was doing the pradakshana of this Mantralaya, the Raghavendra Swami Mutt, he went around the Raghavendra Swami Vrindavanam, and when he came and he took the Arati and Mangalarati and all, he took it and all. And he was having a doubt whether he can do Namaskara there. The doubt has come. He is a Bala Sannyasi. He is a Brahmachari. I think, right from the beginning he has come. Whereas the Mantralaya, the Raghavendra Swami he has taken the sannyasa after being in the family life. So he has a doubt, whether he can do it, because he, after all, Spiritually, if you don't think of, conscious of any of the rules, everything is okay. But they have got certain procedure to follow, because he being the one, he didn't want to commit any error. Not that, he's a great devotee of Raghavendra Swami, he didn't want to commit any error. So he was wondering, am I to do it or not? And see, because the Raghavendra Swami is in the sannyasa, in this sense, he was in the family life, absolutely in the family life. In fact, he was only within few years, less than about 8-9 years of his family life, he has to take the sannyasa. He was so attached to his family. So Raghavendra Swami, in Raghavendra Vijayam, there is a very great epic written by one Narayanacharya. He is his own nephew. So Samaka, he was on the contemporary of Raghavendra Swami. He brought it as it is. He has already attained a great fame, because he has written a book called Bhatta Sangraha. It is on the Jaimini's Dharma Shastra, the Upanishad. He has written that. And there was an exposition in Madurai and Tanjore. It was there. In those days, Nayaka kings were there. And when it was there, and he has written a book called Bhatta Sangraha. And there was one Appaya Dikshitar, very, very famous Advaita exponent, great scholar and saint in South was there. And his in his lineage, there was one Nilakanta Dikshitar was there. He was also equally a very prominent in Madurai. In Nilakanta Dikshitar, there is lot of recordings are there, his greatness and all. So when there was a sort of exposition, the Raghavendra Swami has gone there and presented. He just participated in the discussions, and also he said, in this context, I have also written a small grantha and all. He was not a sannyasi by then. So one Bhatta Sangraha, one book was there. It is on Jaimini's Dharma Shastra, full exposition. Like Vyasa has written Brahma Sutra, for Dharma Sutra, Jaimini has written. Jaimini is nothing but Vyasa's disciple only. So when that was there, and he was finally accorded great, the honor and all, his book was kept on the top of an elephant, a decorated elephant, and it was taken around the temple. So that was the story. He has become so popular. So in that context, so his Acharya, his Guru, Sutendra Tirtha, he wanted him to take sannyasa. So separately he called him, one-to-one we need to talk to him. At that time, Raghavendra Swami got, because you want me to take sannyasa? Balaha Bharyaha. Balano Upanitaha. My own Balaka is, I have not done even Upanayana. Balano Upanitaha. Balaha Bharyaha. Balano Upanitaha. Balas Chaham. I am also young. I am still in the family life, in the beginning of it. I have not done that one. And Balaha Bharyagaha. Balano Upanitaha. Balascha Aham. Na ashrame mestu. I don't want to get into the ashrama, sannyasa ashrama. This was his very, very reply to him. Na ashrama. Vancha nirbandhanena nirgamishyami nunam. If you are going to insist, I will not step the stones of this matta. I will not come into this matta. He was so attached a family life person. He went there, and how can I do it? And in fact, they are a wonderful couple. And in fact, they were not in so great days, because the poverty has stricken them, and they were living on only, very frugal life. At that point of time when he said, and of course, after that, he went home that day in the dream again, it was a dream, transcended into a deep sleep. It is the Saraswati herself had come. His wife's name is also Saraswati. See, look, I know your affection towards that Saraswati. Don't you have an affection towards this Saraswati? So for this you will have to take, that is how the transformation came. And he became a sannyasi. So this is a brief story of Raghavendra Swami. He was so involved. It is like all of us. And the very words he has used is so tender in that Raghavendra Vijayam. It is hard to be believed. And this Bala Sannyasi has said, since he is from Grahastha Ashrama, should I do it? He had a doubt, he didn't do. I didn't want to commit an error, that's all. It doesn't mean any sort of disrespect. So he went and slept in the corner within the matta, because all others have to sleep outside the matta, because in the night. They have to go to the respective chatrams or staying places. And the Swamiji is only who have to do upasana. They stay within the precincts of this mata. So by the night, he didn't get sleep. He was thinking, it's a small thing, but he was having some thoughts, what is that, and he didn't get sleep. He was just about to sleep. At that point of time, suddenly a big noise came. Someone was knocking at the door of the mata, because normally they close the doors in the night, the precincts of the mata in the night. And there was a lot of halagulla was there, and a lot of agitation was there. And then they all went and saw, this Swamiji also went. He was very young enough, it's a brahmachari, he went there. Then one old person, he is about mid-40s, mid-50s, he said, look, I came here as a blind, and the last 2 hours, there was something done to my ears by Swami. And now I have got the sight. He couldn't get out of his excitement. He started shouting. When he started shouting, suddenly people who were sleeping around, they all got up. There was a lot of commotion. And I got, he did some sort of a surgery, or I don't know what happened. I got my eyesight back. This Swamiji also saw that. When he went and he saw, because he says Swamiji, he was doing upasana and all. He's a common man. He doesn't have anything. He come only with a faith. He may get his eyes. He had a problem and it got through. He got his eyes back. So the next morning, first thing he did was, he took bath and went and did namaskar. The namaskar he did, look, because these are all the ideas that is keeping in your mind. In a waking state, you are thinking of your own rules, your own sort of the directions, how you have to behave and all. But nothing has got a meaning. After all, every being is same, every exalted being has to be respected that. So then he did a Sashtanga Namaskar, more than, I think 24 times he did. And finally he did, there's no error committed at all, I should have done even without thinking. That is how he thought. This is the occasion to show. So in the dream state also, he was also, half dreamy. He was about to sleep, half dreamy, but he couldn't sort of think. But suddenly this happened. And he had some doubt, because your doubts are cleared. The Antaprajna, the Tejasa form of the Lord, in your Antaprajna, he clears most of your doubts. So once he clears most of your doubts, you get clarified. Because a lot of people I have seen, they had a lot of dilemmas, assuming, because whether I can do that. See, even in the cases of marriage, because whether I can do. Because there was one professor, he is a very well-known professor, he is electrical engineering professor. He was in Texas University. He was also in Princeton for some time. He was back in India, he was heading an institution and all. He told me, his daughter is also a doctorate, she is also there and all. His son-in-law is also doctorate, he is also working in the university abroad only. When they were, both of them decided to get married, both of them, he is from Andhra Pradesh, they are also from Andhra Pradesh. He had a problem because both of them are from same Gotra, and he is a Brahmin, this professor. He had a dilemma. See, how come, same Gotras can be there, and all his relatives and all his gurus, whom he taught astrologers, this should never happen, this will happen, that will happen, all sorts of things. And he thought over it, he was in a dilemma. Of course, he is a very highly enlightened professor. He knows science. Scientifically, I have to think. That's what he thought. Finally, he thought over it. He said, whatever it is their wish. If they are convinced, and if they are each one of them, both of them are made for each other, we can't let the God will take care of them. But of course, they are all both of them are happy. For him, it was a dilemma. Maybe for others, nowadays people will think, what is there, now you don't know which location, suppose if they are marrying from someone else, what Gotra and all, nothing is there and all. But at that point of time, it was a big dilemma for him, because his family was like that. He has been brought up in upbringing. Even we ourselves will think, when something happens in our family, in the surroundings, we will think like that. The entire thing got clarified because in the Antaprajna, it is latent. It is guiding you, it's taking you out there. If it can do to a brahmachari sannyasi who was very enlightened, he was thinking he should not be committing only an error, that's all. There is no error. Once you have a belief in you, the self-confidence in you, and once you firmly believe this is going to happen, there is no error whatsoever. That gives the self-confidence. The entire Upanishad, what finally gives is the self-confidence, skill, and the excellence which you can achieve. This is exactly in all the states it does, whether you are in the waking stage or when you are in the sleeping stage or dream stage. And both of them, when it happens, only thing is in Bahipragya you are breathing with the gross world, and in the Antapragya you are seeing with the subtle world. Your latent thoughts in your minds are subtle. You cannot just put it back. And now you will see how the subtle and waking state goes into a greater evolution in the deep sleep state. Next week we will see. And it also has got wonderful set of knowledges. And we will see, we don't realize. See, all of us are going through these three only. Irrespective of whatever we have been doing in our life, right from our childhood till now. We were in the waking state, we were in the dream state, we were in the sleeping state, and we were in having a deep sleep. And then, we were coming back again to the waking, from deep sleep to wake again. And this is the experience we are going through in cycles. If we have lived for 25,000 days till day, if 80 years you have lived, 365 it is coming to 26,000 days. If you are doing that, we have been doing this only cycle. And this is only, where is consciousness is there always guiding you. The Lord is there, enlivening power is there to guide you. He is giving everything, and He is giving you the skill, He is giving you the confidence. In order to get your confidence, in order to get your skill, He is manifesting as a confidence, He is manifesting as your skill. You can't see God anything else other than this. And for that only we do all this dharana, dhyana and samadhi, what we call, everything is together. This is how the great Upanishad takes it from the concept of Om. And the first mantra, when we talk about Jagrasthana, it was referring to Akshara A. Then you come to the Swapnasthana, it is referring to Akshata Wu, A, Wu, Ma, and Natha Brahma, finally it brings Om. We have talked about A, we have talked about Wu, and Wu we are still to finish it, and we will say both together to the very highest level how we have ourselves evolved, what is our story, and how we are about to evolve further, and how it is going to take us to the higher realm of spiritual being we are, to realize ourselves to be such an enlightened soul. With this, I will try to keep today's talk, at this. Maybe I think, we will go to, I think this will be wonderful. Next week we will see, it will be still more interesting. We will go through that. And if you have any comments or doubts or anything, you are free to sort of, I think, tell me. I think it should only be my pleasure, to hear it. Actually, next week you will find, because see, once you see this 12 mantra Upanishad only, it talks about waking, dreaming and deep sleep. Apparently it will give what is that, they are going to talk about every time. And, apparently what is it going to be different and all. So now it is, we will know the difference what it is and all. And we will also see the definition for each of, is it okay now? Is it okay? Is it okay? Are you able to hear? Are you able to hear now? Are you audible? I am audible? No, mic is... okay. Am I audible now? I think it should be okay. Yeah, okay. So this is it, we will see. And in this only, the philosophy aspect, in the first 6 mantras, they try the waking, dreaming and deep sleep. And the 7th mantra is important. It calls about the 4th. Chatushpada, Turiya, which is very, very important. Turiya is nothing but 4. In Sanskrit it is only 4. Chaturtha, instead of telling, there is a pure Sanskrit term they have used as Turiya. Turiya is used in Vedas and Upanishads, that they have used it. And all Acharyas have written a great exposition on that. We will see that. With this, today I will come to the conclusion. And we will go for Shanti Pata. Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahaihi Tejasvinavaditamastu ma Vishvidavahaihi. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Krishna Namaste. Thank you very much once again. Look forward to the next week. Bye.